Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dorothy Ami, and I come from a village of Tewa and the village of Ukeo, and 86042, the area code. Accompanying me here today is my husband, Emerson Ami, who is also a potter. I am a potter, and I love what I do. I've been making pottery for the past 30 years. And I have an easy date to remember, which would be February 14th. So I love what I do. Throughout my years of pottery, I really did fall into it, or I don't know how to really explain it, but I had a mentor, and his name was Mark Tubbo, who passed in December of 2017. And I began my career being a preschool teacher. I taught 3 and 4-year-old children, and I never really thought that pottery would impact me this big and carry me through so many years. Mark was a big inspiration to me. He was already well into his way, and he had purchased a mobile home which didn't have running water or electricity. So he would bring clay over to my house, and we would sit down. We would first we'd boil our coffee, position my 19-inch color box TV, Days of Our Lives, and we'd make pottery. At this time, I was just making little pots, to get through the summer, because maybe some of you are teachers, you know how you don't have no money, and you need to get by. So that's how it basically started. And during that time, it was time for me to go back to school. I was happily cutting out my borders, to welcome my students and my parents back, the first day of school. And he said to me, I think you can make it. And with a puzzled look, I looked at him, and I said, what do you mean? And he said this, and he started pointing at the clay. And he said, I want to propose something to you. And I said, what is it? He said, if you quit your job, I'll take you to my shows, I'll teach you how to make pottery, I'll take you to meet my business partners, the galleries, I'll show you everything. And the first thing that came to my mind was, man, no paycheck, right? No 2-week paycheck. Although during this time, my children, they were fairly young. They were like little kids yet. And during this time, my husband was starting his career with law enforcement. So, with his support, I decided not to finish being, I stopped being a school teacher, and I became a potter. And I think with anything, it tests you out from the beginning. Like when I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have to hustle. I'm gonna have to law. All these things came to my mind, and when I started, you won't believe what happened to me. My pots I was making were blowing up, cracking, burning. Man, you talk about a mad woman. I would cry. I'm not talking about me, I'm not mad. But my pottery was. And, I would cry, I would lay on my bed and wiggle my legs and say, I'm going back to work. I'm not going to do this. And Mark, he would, what happened? What happened? What happened to your pot? This is what happened to them. They blew up, they cracked, they burnt. And he would say, get back up. Get back to that pottery. Get back to your clay. Start molding again. Wash it off. Brush it off. You need to start back in. Without him behind me, I don't think I far. And up to his dying day, he was still there, for me and teaching me how all this stuff. As long as I've been making pottery, and when he came to my house to see what I was working on, talk about shaking, he'll be over me like, but he was the best critiquer. Not only with pottery, but with food. We had to make the best food when we invited him for dinner. So that's how I began. A lot of this stuff here, it's not like, well, we still do a lot of stuff traditionally, but when we go to get our clay, we drive now. We don't pack our gunny sack up in our water in our gourd and go to pick the clay and make it right here. We drive to the site and we pick it. But before even sinking my hands in it every day, I thank the Creator for blessing me with what I have. And so that's how I do it. And before I take any clay or take any material, and I'm looking for it, I say a prayer and I leave food as an offering. So I usually pass my material around. I don't know if you would like to feel it, touch it, smell it. Just don't eat it because I eat the clay. But this is how our clay looks when we go to pick it. It's a clay rock. And if you look at it closely, it has a lot of rocks in there. So that's the gray clay that would be the rock that I just showed you. This is the gray clay right here after it's processed. The processing after getting the clay can take up to 3 days. Because when we bring it home, we're gonna, we bring it home, then we pour half of the clay out and top it off to the top with water and let it dissolve. After it all dissolves, then we'll get our window screens. That's why my old house don't have no more windows. Place that over empty buckets and pour the clay through that to strain it. We're getting all the impurities out of it. Once we do that 6 or 7 times, then we go into a finer straining to get out the finer stuff, which will use a paint bag, a pantyhose, or a shear curtain. Then we're going to strain that again, and after that we add sandstone. This is temper because without the sandstone, a lot of things happen to it. And this is why I say I'm the only one that eats the clay, because clay can be salty. It doesn't matter if we get it in the same place all the time. We don't know what minerals are packed on top and bottom, which makes it salty. So I think this is where some of the potters say the clay has an attitude. I think that's because it's salty. So we'll add the sandstone again, and we'll fine strain through the paint bag and also shear curtain. We also have a yellow that's going to go around. Now we work with these two clays, and the difference between them is that the gray clay is a lot more porous than the yellow. The yellow is a lot stronger, and with the yellow clay pots, they turn red. They turn red, and if we make bowls out of them, we could actually serve a stew or eat out of it like a cereal. We also get requested to make pipes for the men in the kiva because they can withstand the heat. And then the gray is more decorative or either dry. You put dry stuff in it like potpourri or nuts or what have you. So this is a red yellow clay pot that's been fired and it's not decorated. So. And then that's the fire. That's the fire yellow, and this one would be the gray color clay pot. So it gets a peachy color. So that's the two differences between them, but we process them in the same way. Once the clay is all once the clay is all done, then we're gonna get pillowcase or bluebird flower sack or for its sanding, and on the rest, I have no problem with finding sand. We'll lay the clay bag there, and what happens is the sand helps to absorb that water from that clay bag. Once we feel the clay bag is firm, then we're going to open it and put the clay into plastic bags. So when I buy groceries, you know what I ask for. For plastic. So then we keep our clay in there to keep it moist. Clay can stay stay soft for a long time. You just really have to care for it. Put water in it every now and then to keep it moist. Then we're gonna coil. So we start off with a small ball of clay, like so. And what I'm banging it around so much is to get the little air pockets out of it. Yeah. So I always start off with something looking like this, like a huggy. But I claim to be the world's best sausage and hamburger patty. And then just with my fingers, I'll go in a circular motion and make a dish. I never know what I'm going to make. I just start off with this little dish all the time. And it's all hand coiled. We don't have a wheel. All we use is the Hopi paper on the table, or a wax paper, or a paper towel. And that's my spinner. I don't have no wheel or nothing. And it works right off the table like that. So everything is hand coiled. So I have the best career. I get to play with clay almost every day. Picking up coil like so, and then just pinching it onto the base. And then making sure that's blended together. Then with that coil, I'm going to bend that to the back of my bowl here. And then flipping it over and do the same thing in the middle. So when I make my dish, I don't want it to be thick or too thin, because I'm going to be bringing this plate down to it.
So items that are going around are basically a plastic and garden board that we use to shape and smooth out the pots. So regular garden boards, I have to break these up, shape them, boil them, keep them hard, and then we use them.
So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm pushing that clay out and also smoothing it. So this clay will stretch. When I started making pottery, I didn't have any gourds, so I used to use the kitchen spoon, which works just as good. And then flipping that over, and then blending that all together and making it smooth again. So this is just constant until consistent until you feel you're finished with the pot. Some pots, they have really curvy shapes and stuff like that. So you will go in, you will place the coil in to make this part, come back out, go back in. So that's what that is right there. Once the pot is all done, then we air dry it for like maybe 3 to 4 days. Then the next step will be the sanding, where we bottom it to make sure that it's sitting right, and also to make it smooth because it'll look rough once it's done. So something looking like this where it's rough, and then we will sand this down. We just use normal sandpaper, medium to fine. But a long time ago, they will use sandstone to sand their pots.
Anybody have any questions so far?
Does anyone Has anyone ever made ceramic? Oh wow. Okay. Has anyone heard about Nampeyo? Okay. What's that? Nampeyo, the pottery. Okay. So, a long time ago, the pottery actually died out where no one was making pottery anymore. And what happened was one day during the fall time, there was a white man who was a scientist. He came to First Mesa and he hired some Pokemon to excavate the ruins of Getty. And they excavated big pots. Some were decorative, some were cooking pots. And so what happened was the women jotted the designs down from that, and that's where Nampeo got her designs. She's known for the migration design, the batwing design, and Grace Chapella, who was my mentor's great grandmother, who lived to be 106 years old, took this butterfly design off the pots, which we use today. So that's how it happened, and he lived with her. He lived with Nampea to go and figure out how this pottery was made. So in return, Nampeo taught that generation about the pottery, and so that's how the pottery started coming, came back to Hopi, to First Mesa. And then of course it just trickled down. But today it's kind of getting, a little bit, I'm kind of in fear of it dying back out again, because there's not very many young people, younger than myself, that are making pottery. There's very few of them. So that's how the pottery came back. Now, once the top is all nice and sanded, then we're going to burnish. We'll wipe the water back onto the pot, and with the riverbed stone, we're going to go over it with the stone. Like so, and it's going to shine right back up. A long time ago, what they used was sheet fat and a rag, and they would shine up, or they would burnish their pot like that. They will also put the sheet fat on the pots after they were fired to seal in the paint on those pots. So this is basically just the burnishing. And I love to make pottery, but I think the most part I don't like is the sanding. But I love to burnish it, love to paint it with gold. So it's gonna look like this, like a shiny burnished. Now the burnishing will burn off once it's fired, because it only helps us paint more smoother if I left it unburnished. Then if I try to paint on it, it's going to get stubbly, or the paint won't clean. So when I'm burnishing, I start to think about my design that I'm going to put on my pot, because I want my design to just fit just right. And some of the designs that I use, I get inspired by looking at older pots. And then I start, thinking, what am I going to put on there, blah, blah, blah. And I always just start off with a line, on my pot, a pencil line, and it just suddenly becomes its own design. The next step to the pottery is the paint. The paint is all natural, so everything, we use is from earth. This is a seaweed plant that we boil down until it's like a tar looking. It almost looks like taffy, like it's like a tar. What we're going to do is we're going to put that. Once the paint is all nice and ready, it usually takes a year to dry because it's real soft. So we're going to put a piece of that on the stone pellet. The stone pellet is a stone that won't lift off any grain, because we're going to with the hematite stone and the water, we're going to bind that together here onto the stone. And that's what we're going to use first of all to outline our design, and that's all the black that you see on the pot. I can show this right here. That's all the black you'll see, and all the colors that we use are all clay colors. Are all clay colors. And we find these, directly in a mesa, hiking, or whatever have you, and we bring them home and try them. So these are all our clay colors. Now, throughout my life with pottery, I never mastered how to use the yucca for as long as I've been painting my pottery. So I started using my own hair. I would cut my hair and then make my own paintbrushes. So that's what I'm using to paint my pottery. So a lot of myself, goes into my pots. When my grandmother would tell me, whatever you're watching, doing, thinking, or listening to it, all molded into your pot. So I like to think, when I started off making my pots a long time ago, the little tiny ones, they have bow and hook drama into those pots from days of our lives. So, they're out there somewhere. I have little drama pots. Once when the pot is all painted, then we're going to fire. And we do outside firing. And this is why I love the Navajos, because they have what I need. Sheep manure is our number one fuel to sheep manure is our number one source to heat our pots. And so, so when the Navajo people, they bring the manure, I have to inspect it. So I become a shit inspector then. I'm really true to this because I need this. I need this to be pure. When I see white residue on the manure, I ask them to see if they're lying to me. Your sheep lick salt block, and they'll say no. And I say, not, you're lying to me. Because what happens is the salt block, when it burns, it turns turquoise and it drips into the pots. And I can't have that, because if you try to peel it off, which really happens, the whole pot will come off too. So we can't have sheep that lick salt block. When we start to bust this up, they have everything. There's stickers, even rolls, even like glass sometimes. I don't know, I guess they eat all this stuff, or I don't know.
All it is the years of the sheep being in corrals, what they're doing is cleaning out the corral for the transport to another place. They're taking out this, and whatever's blowing in the wind that ends up in the corral or drag it in a haystack or hay string, get stickers. Found a bunch of metal on some of it before. She said glass.
It's all kind of something.
junk.
So anyway, we buy this from the Navajo from anywhere from $50 to $100. Or if I have picky or pastries or yeast bread, they love that. We cut that right in half. They're my best friends after that. So that's our heating. So what we're gonna do when we do our firings is we're gonna burn cedar wood for 1 hour, and what we want is a nice thick bed of ash, and that's the picture you see.
You can see what I'm doing. Exactly what I have at home. Demonstration. So cinder block platform, and I burn wood on top of there. My cedar wood. Dorothy will keep on explaining.
And while that's all burning and everything, we're going to chop up the manure, and then I'll start getting the pots ready. So we're going to use, depending on how many pots we have, we're going to use our barbecue grill, a clutch plate, a 50-gallon drum lid. We can use any of that material. It has to withstand the heat, because the heat can get anywhere from 14 to 1800 starting to, so it's already getting hot on the bottom. So then we just let it, we just cover it and then we sit to it and listen to see if there was any blow ups or anything, and then it just burns. They'll burn for 1 hour and then about 5 hours of cooling. And then we'll go back out and we'll take it
Reverse
apart.
the process, remove all the sheet ashes, remove the pottery shards, and the finished products are there.
There it is. So, we do everything that you see here that we've done, and in the end, we give it to the fire, and we never know what's going to happen. So that's always, yeah. So that's always a surprise for us. So I really pay a lot of respect to the people way before me that have always done this, and a lot of them have passed on. And I yearn for how they did this, how they did that, and I still like experiment with different things of what they did versus today, our modern times that we have. But it's how I learned from my mentor, and what I'm carrying on.
Keeping in contact with you guys are here for the presentation stuff. What is this? Besides the pottery. No. The last demonstration we did last week, she made the bottom part of it, and I made the top. And we're gonna, when we usually do that, we continue to build them up, but I put them together. And what I did, I molded them both together, bind them together, and then I started thinking about it, and it just came to my mind, and I started molding. Then I thought, I said, God, it looks like Saturn. And then I started, the colors that went around are all used on this pot, and some of them changed different colors than what they look. They look exactly how they are that went around prior to being fired, and they change colors when they get here. So usually